afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I know we've been hit by the post-lunch hour and the fact that there's sunshine outside, and also the fact that we are now doing two parallel tracks. And I know a lot of people have come to me asking me which track should I attend. So if you would like, I think we could ask the audience to move up a little, if that would be great. We'll now be talking about, we've heard a lot in the plenary and the first session that we had here earlier in the auditorium. We heard a lot about, there are so many policies in place, and not just one policy, but policies that link up. Like we have the manufacturing policy, we have the national policy on electronics, we have the telecom policy, all of them also link back to each other in some ways. And we've heard about some of the problems that exist in India as a whole in actually making these policies a reality, and some of the challenges that lie ahead, both for the government and industry, in actually realizing the potential of what we are setting out to do. I'm now very pleased to welcome our next panel for the IT manufacturing in India. I'd like to request Ms. Vandana Srivastava, who's Additional Director and Nodal Officer with the Department of Electronics and IT, Government of India. She is also the nodal, she's specifically the nodal officer for the Modified Special Incentive Scheme, and she'll be telling us more about the MSIPs later. Welcome. I'd like to now request Mr. J.V. Ramamurthy, who's the President MATE and President and Chief Operating Officer of HCL Infosystems in India. Welcome, sir. Last but not the least, Mr. Nitin Gupta, who is the CEO at Aero Recycling. We were talking before the session started, and I think we have three very different people who can actually tell us about three very different things that are under discussion today. I know we had a lot of questions in the morning from, which were directed at the Department of IT and Electronics, and though Ms. Srivastava is dealing with the MSIP scheme, I'm sure she'll be able to also tell us a little bit more about what the department is doing. And of course, we have great body of experience in Mr. Ramamurthy, as well as a very interesting perspective from Aero Recycling, which is basically a lot is now being talked about with the management of e-waste in India. There are states like Tamil Nadu which have a very specific policy on management of e-waste. They've already notified their own policies. And I think it's a challenge that we'll have to grapple with in the coming years more and more. How do you actually recycle and manage e-waste in a country which is set to produce much more electronic goods, as we're here to discuss? I would like to invite Ms. Srivastava first to probably tell us about the MSIP scheme, and then go back to our other two speakers. The whole panel is very interested actually in hearing a lot of what the audience would like to know, and we'll do about 10 minutes presentations or talks each by the panel, and then come back for a round of question and answers, and then come back to the panel. Mr. Srivastava, all yours.
Good afternoon. Respected dignitaries on dais, Ms. Preeti, respected senior colleagues in the audience, experts from industries, friends and colleagues. Right now in this presentation, I am going to tell about some of the key initiatives in electronic system design and manufacturing by Department of Electronics and IT. India is one of the fastest growing markets of electronics in the world, and there is potential to develop the electronic system and design and manufacturing sector to meet our domestic demand as well as to use the capabilities so created to successfully export ESDM products from the country. So a draft national policy on electronics was released for public in 2011, and after taking views from all the stakeholders, the Union Cabinet has approved the National Policy on Electronics 2012 on October 25, 2012. So the policy is expected to create an indigenous manufacturing ecosystem for electronics in the country. It will foster the manufacturing of indigenously designed and manufactured chips, creating more cyber-secure ecosystem in the country. It will enable India to tap the great economic potential that this knowledge sector offers. So NPE vision is to create a globally competitive electronic design and manufacturing industry to meet the country's needs and serve the international market too. So our NPE goals for 2020, as you can see, is to reach a turnover of $400 billion and attract an investment of $100 million, create an employment of 28 million, enhance exports up to $80 billion, and also to grow the chip design embedded software industry to $55 billion. Many initiatives have been taken under this scheme. Under this policy, you can get the policy on our DIT website, and there are more than 50 initiatives. However, I am going to tell about some of the major initiatives which have been taken under this policy. To name a few, modified SIPs is one scheme which is coming, which is a CAPEX subsidy scheme. Then electronic manufacturing cluster scheme, because government wants to develop some of the clusters having hub of electronic units. And then there is preferential market scheme, where we are going to government is going to provide some preferences in government purchase items. Then semiconductor wafer fab efforts are there to set the wafer fab industry in India. Then there are electronic development funds. So these are major initiatives taken under this policy, though there are many other initiatives like PhD program going to produce more PhDs in electronics, and more training courses also would be planned and in the near future. So in these five, I would be telling more about MSIPs and in brief about EMC and preferential market access scheme. So modified special incentive package scheme was notified in July 2012. So the manufacturing base of electronic products in our country is very inadequate in comparison to demands. And even in cases where products are manufactured, the extent of value addition is very low. So the main impediments in the way of attracting investments for manufacture of electronic products and components are high cost of power and finance, high transactional cost, poor base of supply chain, etc. So the objectives were to attract investments into ESDM sector, this is the major objective, and provide a level playing field and achieve competitiveness in the global market. And to partly offset the disadvantages, the government is offering this modified special incentive package scheme, which provides subsidy for investments in all verticals. Almost all electronic verticals are there. Like I have mentioned, these verticals, it includes telecom products, equipments, IT hardware, almost verticals are covered. So major financial incentives are CAPEX subsidy of 25% if the unit is in non-SEZ area, and 20% if the unit is in SEZ area. And these incentives would be for 10 years. And apart from it, reimbursement of CBD excise on capital equipments if in non-SEZ area, otherwise in SEZ already these exemptions are there. Then in some of the select very high-tech verticals like fab, semiconductor, logics and memory chip manufacturing, LCD fabrication, these are very investment intensive verticals. There the reimbursement of central taxes in CAPEX as well as OPEX is there. So there is no mentioning that it would be only on capital expenditures. All taxes would be reimbursed even on operational costs. So naturally, MSIP's applicant should bring a very state-of-the-art technologies which are involved, and the investments can be new. I mean, applicant can come can bring a new project also, as well as expansion of its existing capacity project. Like if applicant wishes to modernize and diversify its existing ESDM units, then MSIP's scheme is applicable to them. However, in the case of expansion, increase in capital investment in plant and machinery should not be less than 25%. And all stages of value chains are covered under this scheme, starting from raw materials, design, manufacturing, testing, packaging, all these verticals are included in the scheme. The one of the enabling, you can say not a constraint, is that the investor has to be within notified electronic manufacturing clusters. So these EMCs would be notified by the department, and already applications are coming to get the EMCs notified, and applicant for MSIP's consideration has to be within EMCs. Then incentives are for 10 years, and then there are all the electronic products have been divided into different categories, and there are some investment threshold levels set for each of the category, like minimum investment required for in a particular product, for manufacturing of particular product, for getting incentives under this scheme. So it has got a very wide range, like 1 crore minimum threshold is there for IT, mobile phone and IT accessories. 10 crore investment threshold is there for all electronic products, including telecom products, IT products like computers, printers, etc. And all applications which would be received on or before 26th of July 2015 would be considered for this scheme. So application, either it can be a legal entity or a joint venture of legal entities are also allowed to apply into this scheme. The project may include one product, or it can include multiple products also. However, thresholds would be some of the thresholds required to manufacture each of the products separately. So an applicant can also submit more than one initial applications, like if there is a very big company and they want different projects to start, so they can apply for n number of applications they can submit for different projects. And initial application may be made both for new units and expansion units. And a project proposed in the application may include multiple manufacturing facilities at one location or more than one location. Project can be implemented in one phase, or it can be implemented in multiple phases. If the project is to be implemented in more than one phase, then in the beginning itself complete project would be approved. However, the tied up funds detail has to be submitted for one phase only, initial phase only. FC is financial closure, that is a must for a project to be considered. And the first phase should not be less than 20% of the complete project. And further 4 follow-up applications can be submitted for subsequent phases. Financial closure of at least threshold value and at least one phase of the project is to be submitted at the time of initial application. So you need not to submit the entire funding details. You can split a big project into different phases and can submit financial closure for first phase only. So the financial closure means the tied up funds like farm loan agreement for debt portion, legal binding commitment from equity providers, etc. Application can be submitted to nodal officer DIT, and non-refundable application fees to be submitted along with it. The application fee is also very nominal, like for projects less than 10 crores it's 10,000 only, and like that it goes to 1 lakh for projects more than 1,000 crores. Approval process also we have kept very simple, and strict timelines have been set. From the nodal officers, it will go to a PMU process who will appraise the application and submit appraisal note to appraisal committee. There is provision of TEC, technical evaluation committee also, if technology needs to be evaluated, and further appraisal committee will send its final recommendation for approval of the project. Timelines are very strict. We would definitely like to not go beyond 2 months for approval of a project. So guidelines for applying into this scheme are already uploaded on our website. The link is as given. So this is all about modified SIPs, and we are already receiving huge response from industries, and we have received applications also under this scheme. Now another scheme which I told that all the MSIPS applicants have to be from a notified EMC. So I am going to tell a little bit about this scheme also. EMC you can understand as an enabler and not as a constraint for this scheme. The scheme aims to provide assistance for improving infrastructure facilities and common facilities in electronic manufacturing clusters. Assistance available for, there would be 2 types of EMCs, brownfield EMCs and greenfield EMCs. So assistance available for brownfield EMCs is restricted to 75% of project cost, subject to ceiling of 50 crores, and in greenfield its assistance is 50% of the project cost with a ceiling of 50 crores. So the concept for brownfield EMC is a contiguous area wherein the co-located electronic system design manufacturing units have potential synergies and positive externalities. So the guidelines are already available on website, and we are also receiving application for notification of EMCs. So like it is mentioned, unit within a proposed brownfield EMC may produce same or related ESDM products or services and or use a similar input or share similar processes which help create synergies and positive externalities. So you have to, the applicant has to submit details of the units which are there in the clusters, in the proposed clusters and their turnovers, etc. And they can apply for getting notified by the department so that more and more units can avail MSIPS incentives. So detailed guidelines for notification are already uploaded on our website, and the application can again be submitted to nodal officer. There is another scheme, preferential market access scheme, which I would like to tell in brief. This is a policy for providing preference to notified domestically manufactured electronic goods. Like for preference would be given for government procurements and for procurements of managed service providers which have security implications. So preference will be subject to matching of L1 and satisfying technical specifications. It is around I think 30% preference would 30% of the orders would be given to indigenous manufactured item bidder. However, there is a limit set for domestic value addition in terms of BOM, like it should be minimum, value addition minimum should be 25% in year 1 to 45% in year 5. Details you can get on our website. In furtherance to this PMA policy, the Department of Telecommunication DOT has notified in October list of 23 major telecom products for which preference needs to be provided in government procurements. All ministry departments of Government of India have been advised to ensure that the said preference be granted while procuring these telecom products. And DIT also has notified IT products like desktop, computers, laptop, table, inkjet printers. All these products have been notified for getting preferential access. These have already been notified and uploaded on our website. So details can be obtained from DIT website. So all these three schemes are very, very important for manufacturing industry, and we are definitely looking forward towards getting more and more applications under these. And people can take advantage of PMA, Preferential Market Access Scheme also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vastav. I'd like to now invite Mr. Ramamurthy to make his comments. I think we'd have perspective not just from a specific industry body, but also for his experience earlier working with the government. In the morning, in fact, we had a lot of questions about how, security issues. I think that's something which people would also would like to comment on.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, dignitaries of the dais. We have gone through the presentation, what Mrs. Vandana has presented it. We all know very well that the policy is in place, but that is not alone enough. So policy is there and imports are there. Whenever I look at Electronics Niketan, I always get scared. On one side, we are very large exporters on software and will be the largest importers on hardware. If I think about it, this department, on one side, they earn a lot of foreign exchange, on the other side, they spend more foreign exchange. To an extent that we will spend more money or more foreign exchange outflow more than the oil. That scares me. That's just 2020. We are already on 2013 or 6 years plus is what we can think about it. But where is it we are going wrong? Recently, MATE has conducted a meeting in Thailand to understand what the Thai government has done differently from us. And I think I will cover that point also sooner or later in this presentation. But what I wanted to stress upon is few things, that policy alone is not enough, but other things also, the ecosystem also had to put in place. When I'm talking about the ecosystem, it is not only about the taxation and about the policies on manufacturing, also on the issues related to the state, central government domain area, and also what is the existing experience of the people who are already there and whose experience is not that good. And also, on one side, we are planning to do e-waste policies, etc. And as an IT ministry, we are really happy that IT ministry is the first ministry to take care of the ecosystems or e-waste policies, etc. Even much more than the electrical manufacturing industries or electrical component manufacturing industries that we have seen across. Though they produce large amount of waste, then every house at best they can have one computer, but the amount of tube lights that they can have, or on the refrigerators or the face tubes of the televisions, are much more bulkier and heavier and much more toxic in nature, and there are no regulations at all. And while we are planning to do this, our internet, our computer density is still low. We are taking some steps, we are correcting it. But what is that we need to do holistically? Because each state does not report to the center does not report to the state. Each state declares unilateral declaration on the rules without consequences or without looking at what is the national policy and how they wanted to make their work easier and simpler without barriers, and how to move the trade efficiently. And whenever we talk about there is enough of room. There is no need for us to discuss what is the need for IT density or internet density growth in India and the headroom for us to grow. There are enough of PhDs that has been made and enough of right policies that have been taken up by the government of India as well as the state governments across. And there is enough of room of hardware manufacturing that can be done within the country. But whenever such large tablets being distributed to the children, to the school children, and also laptops being distributed free of cost, I get very sad, because none of the Indian industry get a pie out of it. 84% of the content is import dependent. So we are making some neighbors richer, and all our policies are going towards helping neighbors. The reason being 85% import dependent, followed by fluctuations of dollar. If you take last year, 43 to 57 rupees is the fluctuation in the dollar, and we are not able to implement anything on the exchange rate variation. At last we got it done, corrected in this, that it should be a pass-through, then it should not be. Simple example is 13% of the budget of the Defense Ministry has to be surrendered because the dollar has fluctuated. So material is lesser, the purchase is lesser, and we are affecting the most important sector. All the hardware companies in the last year have all gone through uniformly on loss to greater loss to terrible loss. And many of the companies are running much below the rated capacity. What we used to be 3 shifts, at best now it is running at 1 shift, that to first 10 to 15 days totally free. Without, unutilized capacity is growing. The reasons being that we have to put the policy right. What is the policy that is it coming for first time? No. It has been repeated for last 5 years plus, I know. IT Ministry is aware, Finance Ministry is aware, everybody is aware. That is the just inverted duty correction that requires to be done. Recently we have done through MATE a roundtable conference with the Honorable IT Minister, and he understood the problem is on inverted duty. That is, if you make products outside India, it's cheaper than what you produce in India. The reason being the double taxation. First you put it on the components or sub-components or the most important components like hard disks or microprocessors, etc. On top of it you make it on the end component. And we are fighting it for 5 years and still not have been done. Everybody is aware, and we are having a ostrich approach. All is fine. That is the most important thing, and the basic, rather preliminary, or it is, I feel it is a smallpox of this industry. Still it exists. Similarly, the MRP abatement, it is still not got corrected for more than 5 years. And also the accessories, the duties on the accessories, and also the taxation. With VAT coming in, everybody is going towards increasing 4% to 12% to whatnot. It's growing crazily. And with GST coming in, everybody wanted to put whatever taxes are there in the locally, for the simple reason that they get better compensation when the GST comes into effect. And the GST every year it is eluding. So today, if you ask any of us what is our experience, all of us are running losses, and whereas we have given a very bright picture to everybody outside India, and saying that India is a big destination and the IT growth is going to happen, and compared to all the statistics that we have, naturally it has to happen, etc. But it did not happen factually. So unless this is corrected, I don't think, I would like to differ with the ministry that policies are right, but the way in which it's getting implemented is absolutely, we will not go anywhere. And also, what promises were given by the government and what has been kept up is a very sad state of experience. You take the Dell's experience in Tamil Nadu, everybody is aware, but nobody wants to correct it. Because there's a sovereign state of Tamil Nadu versus Union of India. That is what it is. Nobody is taking the ownership, neither at center or the state, even to have a discussion. I am telling you, as a MATE president, I tried several times to talk this topic with all the people, but nobody is involved in getting this negotiated. The same thing with HP and HCL have got done in Uttarakhand, and the government went back on the policies because the government has changed. One party changes, another party comes, they don't hold their promises at all. If somebody is making capital expenses and capital purchases and also buying land, machinery, and employing so many people, it is simple that it requires to be, whatever is the guarantee given by the government has to be, it should be honored irrespective of, it's a sovereign guarantee. And if it doesn't come, naturally there won't be any attractions for India being the destination for this. The second point which I really feel is, I don't need to talk about the e-waste policy. E-waste policy, what is the Union Ministry of Environment and Forest are suggesting, is not accepted by the state pollution control boards. And state government is formulating its own thing. The paper and the type of the documentations, the proofs that requires to be put, and the type of penalties that exist, extremely difficult to do business with this way. I think this is somewhere we all have to sit up and take a situation that this cannot be corrected if you want it. Otherwise, the policies will be right, operation success, and the patient is not there. The same thing with the GST policy. The GST policy coming in, nobody knows what will be the taxation that will happen. There should be some uniformity. If you feel that IT is essential, everybody accepts that investments in IT will bring direct correlation. For every 10% investment in IT, 1% GDP will come to India. It is not our statistics, it is the World Bank statistics. So one side we are struggling for GDP growth, and the other side we are investing, but it doesn't help any Indian industry, and who are already there, who are getting uprooted. And also, why I am saying it is, I am not adding anything on disability costs, what China is talking about, or power and transportation, etc. I feel very sad every day. $1 rupee is going up in the diesel. It's increasingly putting burden on the transportation. I wanted to tell you about a few years back, about 3 years back or 4 years back, we were selling one truck of load with 1 crore worth of material. Today it is 40 lakhs because the price erosion is as high as 31%, and so is the numbers of units are growing up and the volume is coming down. Finally, what is happening? For the same truck to go, because everybody is expecting turnover to go up, profits to go up, we are on the treadmill, and the speed is going up, so is the inclination. So we have to run faster than the last quarter if we have to keep our jobs intact. And this is, finally, are we working for a transportation company or are we working for an IT company? I don't remember. That is one thing. And also, the distances, if we have to surface transportation and air transportation, everything is becoming very difficult. If on one side the hardware prices are falling, the transportation prices are growing. We are not making use of the advantage of India being center of Asia. China is one corner. We are in the middle. We can address easily African market, Asian market, Middle East market quite comfortably, and we are not making use of it. I am feeling sad that all the designs are being made in India. Several outsourced R&Ds are given in India, whether it's Cisco's or HP's or GE, so many people. Entire embedded software, whatever we are talking, we are all making the designs here, and they are getting produced outside. When IPRs can be made here, all the policies, talent is available, experience is available, we need to follow this. That's one point. And also, I feel we tend to get lost when we look at the revenue and the taxation, etc. While other countries look at the employment, the number of employees that get absorbed in a particular unit is much more important than the other. That is what they are looking at it, because anyway the person who is getting employed will spend money, and government will get either directly or indirectly, state-wise, central-wise, they will earn back that money. It's a question of a year or two before the cloud can pass through. That's one point. And also, all the policies can be put in place if we can correct only these three. I feel countries like Thailand has grown from I'll just give you the statistics, 4.5 billion in 1996, 60 billion electronics produced today, just in 16 years' time. And 40% of the world hard disks are being manufactured there. And second largest AC manufacturers in the world, fourth largest refrigerator manufacturer in the world. And what is that they did right? Adoption and adaptation of technology, and also removing all the trade barriers, tariff barriers on components and subcomponents like this. They have removed it automatically, and the end computing is made and the end product is made. And also liberal economic policies for promoting infrastructure. And they started the contract manufacturing in a big way. IC design now they have added it, and others are catching up on this. And ensuring these clusters and all have taken up. So earlier I used to think Thailand is known only as a tourist destination. Now it's becoming a manufacturing destination. It is not that we should be worried about Thailand or Vietnam, because as a country they are very, very small. They can't scale up with the skilled manpower or the infrastructure, or even if your domestic consumptions are so small compared to us. I think we should not make use of this. If we can correct these existing lacunas, one is on taxation, whatever is existing on the inverted duties, and also getting these things corrected. To sum it up, I just wanted to say that if we can correct on the inverted duty and with these MRP abatements and removal of the duties on accessories, and CST being taking care while getting implemented a little carefully, that is enough. We don't want to ask for disability costs or anything, and also make the e-waste policy uniform and simpler. If we can make it simpler, the industry is matured enough to put later, as it goes, the industry also will accept it. All we wanted to do it is, on one side, there's no way that the hardware industry imports can be higher than the oil imports. That's a sad thing. I think also existing manufacturers should be, the difficulties of the existing manufacturers should be removed immediately, because that is their word which matters for the world. Everybody will ask what is the experience of the existing people first. And if the word does not go well, policies can remain in paper, nothing will fly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ramamurthy. I think two presentations, one which is looking ahead, and one also which is dealing with a lot of the legacy systems that we have in the country that need to be changed. So I think the contrast between the two, of course, would lead to some more questions. In fact, interestingly, you also mentioned, how the transportation, you mentioned that so many things are linked. One thing we did try to do before the conference was to try and get other ministries on board. Because what we hear a lot from people that we talk about, they say that it's not just the Department of Electronics and IT or, a couple of the other ministries. It's ministries like Power, that road transport and highways, actually all the ministries that need to come together to make what we are trying to discuss possible. And interestingly also, the fact that our electronics import bill, I believe, by 2020 is set to outstrip our oil import bill. And I think that is definitely quite a scary statistic to think about, given the fact that also domestic demand is growing 20% year on year. And I think that's the right time to now invite Mr. Gupta to talk about e-waste and e-waste recycling.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting us. It's a pleasure speaking here. Before I get into electronic waste, just a small comment. I was just speaking to my colleague a month back, and we're comparing growth of China and India. So it looks like China is an economy which is being governed as a manufacturing economy. India as an economy is being governed as a service economy. The well-educated Indians service people outside India. The lower-educated Indians service people in India. Right? Until as that mindset changes, we as a country, independent of whatever policies we make, how do we implement them, we cannot grow as a manufacturing destination. Right? And as Mr. Ramamurthy has clearly stated, that's a scary fact that our import bill for electronics will be much more than oil, right? So we need to start thinking about it. Specifically around electronic waste, there are a few things I'll cover. What exactly is electronic waste? Electronic waste is anything and everything that runs on electricity and has become end of life. Why should you and I be bothered about it? There are 5 key reasons. First, it's hazardous in nature, so contains traces of lead, cadmium, chromium, and needs to be handled in an environmentally friendly manner. Second, it's a data security issue. More and more companies and even individuals have a lot more data, legal, business, financial data, in some sort of digital form, right? And how do you take care of that is pretty sacrosanct. Thirdly, it's a legal issue. So very recently, Government of India has come out with yet another policy around electronic waste, which is pretty complicated. I completely agree with you. But that essentially brings in the concept of EPR, and how do we make sure that that is implementable and exercisable and is acceptable to all stakeholders is still something that needs to be worked on, but at least the policy is there. Fourth, and more importantly, electronic waste is also some sort of source and a cheaper source of metals. So just as some statistics, the amount of energy required to, let's extract 1 gram of copper from electronic waste is 77% less as compared to extracting the same amount of copper from a virgin mine. So on a pure carbon footprint basis, it's a much cheaper source of metals. Obviously, the way that these metals are recovered is pretty high tech, right? Now, electronic waste contains rare earth metals like neodymium, germanium, selenium. It contains precious metals like platinum, gold, palladium, and base metals like copper, lead, and nickel, right? But the technologies to extract these in pure form in an environmentally friendly manner is as complex as a fab manufacturing technology, right? And but that's still a factor we looked at. Lastly, it's about sustainable development. As the demand for consumer electronics is growing, particularly in India, the demand for these metals and minerals is also growing, right? Our Earth does not have the capacity to meet the demand. We are seeing that regularly. For example, especially in the case of rare earth metals, it's a geopolitical issue. 97% of the world's rare earths are concentrated in China. Right? Unless we start looking at either finding new avenues or new mines for these, or finding alternative to these, or recycling those. Those are three options. As the manufacturing in this country is bound to grow, the supply of raw materials will also become a problem. Right now we are here, we'll move the situation there. So we need to look at it from a pretty holistic manner. But what relevance does it have in this particular context you're speaking about in manufacturing? So three different things. First is, at the manufacturing stage, at the design stage, we need to start thinking about how to design for recycling, right? If we start doing that today, when the equipment becomes end of life, whether it's a refrigerator or a laptop or you name it, it'll be much more easier from a societal cost perspective to both collect it back and recycle it back, right? So that design for recycling concept has to be introduced at the manufacturing phase or design phase, right? So we need to do some work on that. Second, I did say that as per the regulation, and also, see, not 100% of input in any manufacturing plant can be converted to output. Whatever is residual waste has to be disposed of properly with sort of a component electronic waste recycling company, whatever you win, right? With that, I will sort of leave the discussion open for questions, and we'll take it from there. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gupta. I would now open the floor for questions and comments. I'd just like to request, if you have any specific questions for Mr. Ramamurthy, I suggest we take those first. He has to leave early, and then we could again go back. Any specific questions for Mr. Ramamurthy? I'm sure there would have been some, because he raised some very interesting and I thought pretty contentious issues as well. Which yes.
Otherwise, all these policies will never see the day of life. We can only emphasize on these points that are of crucial importance.
Thank you. The gentleman over there.
So as you said that 80% of the components which are used in the IT.
Sir, may I request you also everyone to identify themselves for the benefit of the panel?
Yeah, I'm Dhairya Kinariwala and I represent Pawan Industries. We are a manufacturer of potentiometers. And regarding the IT hardware question, 80% of the components you said that is being imported from outside India. So I want to ask that which are the components you can identify which Indians can be capable of manufacturing by ourselves, or which can be manufactured in-house?
Manufacturing goes into phased manufacturing program. First phase, second phase, and third phase. The simplest thing we can do, even with a semi-knocked down condition and assembling it here, and then slowly go into phased manufacturing, so that you can do something less important, and then we can go about making to more complex and more difficult situations. It is not that we have not done this type of phased manufacturing program in India. Manufacturing industry in India knows this quite well. Whether it is in public sector or in private sector, it does exist. Whether it is in the public sector, we have seen several of the new technical collaborations being signed up with various, whether it's power sector or aeronautical sectors or in defense sectors, getting used it. The same is in the private sector with automobile industry, etc. Now all the anybody who is who in the world is existing in India. Whether it is even the recent like BMWs or Mercedes, and everybody are here. So it is, when compared to that, this manufacturing of us is much simpler. Yes, when it comes to question of like hard disk manufacturing or any type of microprocessors, etc., it takes some time. But also Government of India wanted to do the fab policy. They have already been ready. They have called for quotations, and it is about to be announced. I am sure that will fall in place sooner or later, the fab facilities with this coming in. Not only it will take care of the IT industry, but whatever is required for this hybrid manufacturing, microelectronics or integrated IC chips will be made available, whether it's for medical electronics or power electronics or defense electronics, etc.
Thank you, sir.
Do we have any more questions specifically? We can take other questions as well. Comments also, I'm sure. Yes, please, sir. There.
Good evening, everybody. I am Paul Ilangovan, representing SPEL Semiconductor Limited, Chennai. So SPEL is the India's first and only IC packaging and testing industry. We are in the business for the past 25 years. So considering the MCIPs and the EMCs, it's the saddest part that, as Mr. Ramamurthy mentioned, that government is focusing only on the big players. In India, there are 110 plus SMEs are there, but the MCIPs and the EMCs are only focusing on the big or global players only, because the companies, when they want to establish a cluster, the turnout for that company should be 1,000 crore. It is a highly costliest one, and no such industry cannot have government support if they achieve the 1,000 crore. So we have requested through some of the forums to reduce it to 200 crores, but I am not sure whether it has been considered or not. Then, as mentioned by Ramamurthy, the ecosystem and supply chain is very much complicated, and imported any components is easier than manufacturing in India, because it has multiple taxation, and each state and union territory has followed their own standards, and there is no unique standard across the country. So it's a bit complicated one. So we request the government to discuss among the industries, because I think my wavelength is similar to Mr. Ramamurthy's one. So the industrial part, we feel that the policies are good enough, but we need to have some firm and groundwork before they have been implemented. So this is a request to the government side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have mentioned that in the EMC scheme it is 1,000 crore. See, it is not strictly 1,000 crore which is mentioned. What I understand is that we are envisaging. And EMC, it doesn't mean that the small units cannot go into it. Once the big EMCs clusters would be notified, even the smaller companies can go and work into it. So we have got applications, a few applications, and I think 5-6 EMCs would be notified in coming month. Probably even small units can find place into it. After that, thank you.
I'm sorry to say that we have applied through one of the forum, and we heard that our request has been to form the cluster has been not considered, because we didn't meet out the respective.
No, as far as my knowledge is concerned, no application has been turned down so far. No applications rejected. In fact, we are about to receive now applications. So I recommend you to just read the brownfield guidelines, which has been uploaded recently, few days back only, okay. And then see if you can do it.
Fine, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I'm Kishore Naran from Narnix Technolabs, just an independent design house. My questions are two. One is what kind of focus do we have on improving the design ecosystem? Without design, indigenous design and good, reliable, rugged designs, we are not going to see much of good manufacturing of a global standard. First thing. And second, I would like you to throw some light on this, your electronic development fund. What is it all about? Just be brief, if not detailable.
I think it's, I'm not very clear about this thing, but this is in primitive stage, and I think department is going to, create a fund for, and applications would be invited and scrutinized, and probably it will be disbursed. But I am not very, knowledgeable in this.
Development fund is for design development, or what kind of activities?
I had to find it out, because I'm not very.
I think if I'm not mistaken, I did hear this somewhere. Also, we heard someone talking about how an equity fund is going to be set aside for startups. If I'm not mistaken, it might have something to do with.
I think equity fund was for startup also, manufacturing.
I think that's something that they've been trying to set aside some money for actually encouraging startups. We could of course check that. So I thought it's really interesting. I mean, more than just the questions, it would be interesting to hear some experiences. We have people from very many different sectors, companies, different size companies. Yes, please, sir.
My name is B.M. Shetty. I am coming from IFB Industries, a company which has grown in India producing the appliances. And our main product is the front-loading washing machines. We are the leading manufacturers in front-loading washing machine, having a full-fledged R&D center and automated plant facilities in Goa. What experience I would like to share after hearing from morning about the various parts, and my colleague Mr. Narang shared something about the design part. Today's situation is such that we strongly believe that indigenization is the only key. And somewhere when we started, we indigenized almost 99% of the component, barring few which were coming from Italy or Germany, from this region. Today when we produce the electronic machine, we feel that it is simpler to make it here because those mechanical programmers, etc. were complicated and requiring, I'm talking about controls of any appliances. And it was calling for huge investment to produce and specific to that product. However, over last 8 years, the situation is different. Number one, to make a product in India to suit the Indian typical ambience conditions, where a respected product like a washing machine, which is compared with the housemaid and given the same treatment as a housemaid, it sits in the balcony or in the bathroom. So your design has to be very, very rugged to sustain to the Indian ambience condition and usage conditions. Same is the case with the power. So we spend lot of energy and time for our future, that is to make very, very eco-friendly programs, water-saving programs, then catering to the Indian operating conditions. That means even at 55 degrees and relative humidity of 99%, product should stand. But when we have to develop it, we have to get it developed from country like China. In India, it is just not possible to get it at the same price as China. So when we discuss, we have to give away our all know-how. The same company now makes the controllers for other 3 or 4 appliance companies in India. What I mean is purely Indian companies. I am not talking about multinationals settled in India. They have got their own R&D from their country. And the fact of that is not known to any of the engineers. We interview their people, but it is so secret that they only know the circuit diagrams, not the interior part. So the company like us and the things which Mr. Narang mentioned, who are the Indian base, though electronic is not our total forte, there has to be something in the part of R&D, etc. and the efforts to make these components cheaper in India, because it becomes very difficult to carry such a big inventory, deal with the Chinese people, always at risk. So these policies, whichever are good, should reflect into this part. That is our request. Because हम तो ना धोबी का कुत्ता घर का ना घाट का. We are not electronic manufacturing. We are not going to produce our own PCBs. But in China, that government has given so much of things that some of the appliance companies make their own PCBs. Whereas we are with the general PCB manufacturers, very big giants, and they work for us. Practically every 3 months, our engineer is stationed at their part or their engineer is stationed here, and without anything we are giving the free access to the R&D and certain important findings and the developments that we do here on our soil.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sure, please.
But on that, I completely agree with you. In fact, if anything is designed and developed in a developing country like India, the constraints under which that is designed and developed are so humongous that it is ready to be exported out rather than the other way around, right? So let's say if you are an automobile designer, you're designing a car in the US, you'll not worry about gasoline mileage, right? The gasoline is cheap there, people don't worry. But if only a Tata Nano could have come in India, the cost is a concern, the power is a concern, gasoline is a concern. So more and more innovation out of this country has to be encouraged, right? Whether that innovation has necessarily to be in the design part of it, or has to be in the R&D part of it, or manufacturing part of it, that is for the government to decide. But overall as a country, we need to be much more innovative on how we sort of work and how we get perceived, and look at sort of exporting innovations out of India, exporting technology out of India, not the other way around.
I think here, yes, please.
See, we are talking of innovation. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, may I just take the question from
I'm Suresh from the ELCOMA, the Lighting Association. My question is addressed to Mr. Nitin Gupta. It's about e-waste. If Mr. Nitin Gupta could give us a glimpse of how computers and the e-waste is handled, whether e-waste recyclers actually pay, whether they buy the waste, and how probably it is handled in a city like Delhi, where probably none of the recyclers are physically located. If you can give us some idea, it will be very helpful to us. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So I'll start off with sort of the entire ecosystem around electronic waste. See, there are two buckets of electronic waste. One which is actually profitable to recycle, another one which is non-profitable to recycle. Profitable to recycle would be the metal value that you can extract is more than the logistics cost and the processing cost, and let's say some sourcing cost. Right? In that category, you'll have mobile phones, you'll have high metal value items, you'll have printed circuit boards, you'll probably have computers, you'll have laptops and so on and so forth. Where the residual metal value in them is much more than what the processing cost or logistics cost might be. So in that, there is a certain amount of money that can be paid to take it back and recycle it properly. Right? Now there are other categories of equipment, for example, CFLs, tube lights, washing machines, refrigerators, where the logistics cost and the processing cost is much more than the actual metal recovery. Televisions in that matter also, right? There, the users or somebody has to pay for environmentally friendly recycling, right? Now the situation as it exists in India is more than 97% of the country's electronic waste is being handled in the informal sector, right? And the way it is done is pretty hazardous. So just to give you some glimpses, most precious metals are concentrated in the printed circuit board. To extract some gold, some silver, or some copper from it, it is dipped in a pond of cyanide plus sulfuric acid, physical pond. Okay, cyanide has a pretty sort of a good reaction with gold. Some gold floats to the top, which is skimmed manually, and the remaining solution is dumped in the nearby water streams. Okay, most people who are engaged in this are typically women and children. Right? To extract some copper from cables, it's burnt in open air. Now, if you burn plastic under 1000 degrees Celsius, you generate dioxin and furans, which cause cancer. So the challenge is that all of this thing is being done. It's done in a profitable manner today. The consumer is not willing to pay for electronic waste recycling. The OEMs are not willing to pay for it. The informal sector makes money. Everybody is happy. But once you load external costs on top of it, which are social cost and environmental costs, this value chain breaks. Right? So not for all electronic waste, it's not possible to pay. For some electronic waste, it's definitely possible to pay. And as an example, Attero is leading the technological innovation in electronic waste. We are the only company in the country which has the capability to extract pure gold, pure platinum, pure palladium, pure silver from incoming electronic waste. That particular technology is a combination of mechanical recycling, metallurgical engineering, and chemical engineering. And we are one of the few companies in the world as well, right? Indigenously developed, patented in the world. So that technology in itself is pretty high innovation and also capex. So not many people would have that. In terms of recyclers being present in Delhi per se, I believe there are 4 or 5 recyclers physically present in the city, right? Who are actually working on the ground. But the challenge again remains from a supply chain perspective. Is there enough material or is there enough ecosystem developed around it? Or are regulations simple enough to be implemented? Having a policy and a regulation is one thing, but having them implementable is another thing. Forget about e-waste rules, even our battery rules. All of us use cars and so on and so forth, right? Our battery rules are not implementable today. How many of us go back and give our batteries back to the OEM to say, okay, take it back and recycle it properly and give me a rebate on the next one? That's not there. So India as a country has a lot more policies and rules, but implementation of each of these is either lacking due to lack of funds at the implementation authority or lack of coordination between who implements and who decides the policy.
When you see as far as Delhi is concerned, are there any end producer responsibilities on the computer manufacturers which will probably push more to the formal sector? Is there something of that?
Yeah, so in the new electronic waste regulation, the government of India specifically brought in EPR, or extended producer responsibility. What that would mean is Samsung's responsibility as an example on the cell phone would not end when the warranty ends. Samsung's responsibility would end when it is end of life, taken back and recycled properly, right? These are similar policies which exist in Europe, Japan, and so on and so forth also. In fact, in Europe, producers collect something called an advanced recycling fee from the consumer, which is some very small amount of money that goes back towards funding the logistics and the processing cost, right? So this has been implemented, but the challenge remains, most producers in India frankly don't care. Right? So is that policy helping electronic waste being channelized into the formal sector? We are not seeing that on the ground as yet.
So I think I'll just continue with this particular point right now. Is that, see, here what we need is what we are missing in India is social consciousness also. We are not reached a stage when we, in spite of being so-called evolved society now, modernized society, educated society, but we still are not conscious about our obligations toward the environment and all these issues. So along with all the government policies and trying to pressurize this and even all the NGOs coming in, unless we as society also evolve and feel responsible towards this, I think this is not going to really become a reality.
I sort of tend to agree with you. I'll give you one more statistic. So we do a lot of collection drives in schools, colleges, and offices as well, right? Schools, the children are much more conscious, right? They would be willing to do the right thing. People who have grown up, they don't just want to change, right? And they don't care what is legal, what is illegal, as long as it fits their right way and right way of doing things. So it's an open question, open debate. All I'm saying is that any holistic policy for the country needs to take into account social costs and environmental costs as soon as possible. Right? Otherwise, we'll keep remaining a developing country. We need to transition to a developed country.
Correct.
I'm Lakshmi Raghupati, former director from Ministry of Environment, and I've been working for the last 5 years on electronic waste. And I'm the person who really worked on the process of evolving the legislation, the regulation. I'll just mention two things. One, this was one piece of regulation which came as bottom upwards, not top downwards. Ministry was very reluctant to bring the regulations, but it was the collective wisdom of all the people, including the recycling community, the producers. Everybody said there should be a piece of regulatory framework which will follow the system of channelizing the end-of-life product for a safe recycling. That was the main objective. That objective, keeping that objective in mind, the whole system was evolved. But even there was one more impediment given, because as soon as under the EP Act, as soon as you make a regulation, you have to put it on the public domain. For 1 year, they collect the information and all. Then next year, when it is finalized, it's notified. But in the case of e-waste, the regulation was notified in May 2011. Subsequently, 1 year time was given for the producer, because as Nitin had already told, the focus was on EPR, that is producer responsibility. The producer has to take the responsibility. The producer responsibility is still not in place. The producers are struggling, I don't know what for, because they know EPR is there globally, but the things have not come into. So there is some sort of a responsibility to be shared. Whether they want some financial systems to be put up, whether they want some system which will take care. One major lacuna that we have is the informal recycling activity, like what Nitin told about the way in which it is being done. But that will only stop provided the producers bring the barrier that you don't allow the material to flow to them. Today also, even today, after so many years of struggle, 5 years we have been struggling, still the material flows to them. They get enough material. But we are trying to regularize them, but they can only do some collection. The other part is the ROHS compliance. These two things, EPR and ROHS compliance, have been brought into the regulatory framework because we have to be at par with the global systems. Global systems demand for the EPR as well as for the ROHS compliance. So both of these things, once they start functioning through the regulatory framework, there may be a little gap. 1 year time was given, still nothing has been put in place. So hopefully that by May 2013, there is a challenge that most of the producers are now working towards bringing something in place. So there should be something in place which will take care of it. but everything takes a little time. But here, it should be the least time, because we can't have magic happen, because there is a huge community of about 160,000 recycling community in the informal sector. How do we bring them? So that is the challenge. So we face the challenge, but people, some of the good recycling companies, Attero is there are a couple of others who have really put their efforts, put their money, put their task to bring it up. So they need the material for research. That is the challenge.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Please.
My name is B.S. Bhatt. I am from a PSU, which is manufacturing telecom equipments. My question is on PMA. As per the notification which came in February 2012 rather, there should be something like 25% minimum value addition, which will go from 25 to 45% for eligibility under PMA. In fact, the DOT notification which came in October, again it said for most of the products, the PMA, for the purpose of PMA, the value addition should be something like growing from 35% onwards. Now, as per the original notification from Ministry in February 2012, the value addition definition is given as basically the BOM cost, basically indigenous component versus total BOM cost. Without any ecosystem in the country for electronic manufacturing, with almost more than 95% or rather 90% of the components being imported, how does the Ministry expect that we will ever meet the value addition and get qualified under PMA?
Ms. Srivastava, would you like to take
that? See, we need to begin from somewhere. It is a fact that we are not able to do right now much value addition, but government is trying to, make everything more viable, little more viable with these schemes. Maybe the manufacturing or value addition. So slowly we have to start. We cannot say that we are not doing, so we will not be able to do. That is what it has been discussed also, that we need to start innovating. And first, like Ramamurthy sir told, that we have to go for phase-wise, manufacturing process. First, we should go for assembling and probably then more value addition. So we need to start from somewhere. That is what I feel, and maybe policies are to, make little more viable things.
No, I think there's something which I can do value addition on or maybe answer to his question. In fact, a few weeks back, I had a personal one-to-one discussion with Dr. Ajay Kumar. It was on this only, this policy only, and he was asking me as a designer that we need to see, Ministry also needs some input from the industry. How do we, evaluate, give weightage to each and every component? And he asked me as a designer, you tell me, how do we add in component for that design? How much weightage should be given to design component? But then the question is, within design, there are two components. One is the fresh design, which can be evaluated as like IP, okay, which can be very well quantified. But then another factor which, when we talk about design, we never talk about, where industry can push in and where there's a local value addition, is the engineering activities that go into customization, ruggedization, validation of the product for manufacturing. When we take an IP, whether it is our in-house IP or an outsourced IP, we need to design it for the manufacturing. And all that exercise also is very, very cost intensive. So if we can help the ministry quantify that as a percentage, then our Indian value addition component increases in this thing also. So for which you can take a benefit in case you are an Indian manufacturer. But I think we also as an industry need to give inputs to the ministry so that they can also come up with the right weightage to different things.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you. We need some inputs in this regard.
Do we have any more comments or even experiences? I mean, I think the good thing about this forum is that all the people who are here are really part of the industry in different ways. I mean, if we could also have some experience sharing, that would also be great. Would anyone like to do that?
One more comment which I wanted to mention in continuity of IFB, this thing was about innovation and design. See, we have been talking about innovation in India, but how do we innovate without first building up the competence to innovate? we have lost touch with the competence to innovate in India. As I mentioned in the morning session also, our engineers are no more design people. They don't want to become specialists in anything. They just want to be, on the management level or on the upper superficial layer. They're riding the waves and enjoying the fruits of the, being entrepreneurs or being socially successful, financially successful. So we need to ingrain these things and somehow create the environment by policies, by regulation, by social mindset that people enjoy or take pride in becoming specialists, that they believe in building competence for which India has been famous for centuries.
In fact, I'd like to strongly disagree with your comment here, if I may, because we at 9.9 Media, one of the most the well-read and interesting magazines we have is called Ink India, in which all we deal with are Indian innovators, people who are actually in the entrepreneurship space and doing some very exciting things. I would very, very strongly disagree with you that we've lost our innovative spirit. I don't think so.
You are most welcome to, and I can I can give you counter arguments.
And we saw some very, very interesting presentations at another conference we had here today. So I'll just place my...
Your point is valid, but at what scale you are talking is very different what I am talking. I'm talking about the national growth. See, I'll tell you, if you look at the global scenario, I'm talking about electronics. I'm an electronics engineer. So most of the MNCs are being led by all Indians today. Okay, why? Those are the people who in 70s, 80s, they went to US because in India we did not have growth for further deeper research and studies and working further. They went there, they proved their mettle, and they are leading all the multinational organizations today. But today, for the last 10, 15 years, the kind of engineers what they are going and doing, we are not actually interested in becoming specialists. Very few.
Your point is well taken.
So that is why we are not able to come up as a nation. And we need to contribute back to the industry, to our nation. And even NRIs, sorry to offend anybody if anybody gets offended, but that's a fact. People who are coming back to India, they are only cherry picking because the market there is down now, and they want to encash on Indian market. They are not doing for the cause of contributing to India internally.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks. I'm sure that should generate some more comments before we end. If anyone else would like to share any more thoughts from the panel, perhaps.
So I sort of agree with Preeti there. See, India has a lot of innovation talent. Probably the challenge might be how to institutionalize it, how to channelize it.
Structured innovation.
Whatever it might be, but India as a country, because of the constraints we live in, we innovate almost every damn day. Right? Innovation need not be only technical in nature, it can be business in nature, it can be social in nature. To give you certain examples, if you go outside India, you'll not find sachets of shampoos anywhere else. It's only in India, right? That's an innovation. There's a lot of innovation that's happening in the country. To your point, how can we structure it better so that can affect GDP growth? Completely taken. But I agree with her, India is a country with a lot of people who want to innovate, who want to do the right things. It's for the industry also to tap them properly and not expect the government to do everything and sort of handle them.
We are leveraging our innovative capabilities towards more on commercial and all those things. And innovation in India is jugaad.
I think also, sir, what you said, structured innovation. Yesterday we had a very interesting point about disruptive innovation. I think that's another thing which is happening a lot here.
Like, hang on. Let's not confuse structured and disruptive. Disruptive is which are going to disrupt our society, the way we think, the way we live, our way of living. They are disruptive in nature otherwise. But structured is, are we able to come up with some rugged, rational big systems and products? That kind of, that's where structured innovation in a systematic as a team, can I come up with a reliable product system solution?
Yes. Any other comments before we close? I think we've done quite well on time. We still have 5 minutes left. If any comments from you, Mr. Vastav, closing remarks for...
Actually, I wasn't expecting more questions on MSIPs because it is just been launched. But anyway, I think in due course of time, we'll also clarify the things.
I think I'm sure you will once, you will definitely, I'm sure, get more queries.
We will come across the different problems in applying also. So
I'd just like to share one very interesting anecdote. I remember when I was preparing questions for Parliament, we used to have these supplementary questions. And one question was regarding, power equipment that was being imported, I forget, either from Germany or from China. And the question was that all the instructions in that equipment were written in that particular language. And we didn't have good translators, but we had to hire engineers from that particular country to come and translate. And I remember this, and I think when you were talking about how we need to actually become exporters rather than importers, maybe Hindi is the way to go, that we put in instruction in Hindi and we get more employment, also send more people with our equipment. So I just thought I'll mention that. Thank you all so much. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Gupta. Thank you, Mr. Vastav. And of course, in his absence, Mr. Ramamurthy. Thank you so much for being a great audience. And tea will be served at 3:15 outside. And we will close with the last session, which is the closing plenary at the Gulmohar Hall. First floor, just across in the convention center. Thank you.